Yeah.
Hey, comedy fans, welcome to another episode of the Comedy at the Carlson Cast. I'm your host, my name is Vinny, and joining me in studio today, it's Ben Bailey. This episode is brought to you by Comedy at the Carlson, the only place where you're going to be able to see Chris Kid Reed, July 27th through the 29th, and Benji Brown, August 3rd through 5th. Tickets for those shows and all shows are available now at carlsoncomedy.com. Now let's kick it over to the studio and have a chat with Ben. Good morning, Carlson casters. Welcome to another episode. My guest today is not just an Emmy Award-winning game show host. He's a two-time Emmy Award-winning game show host.
I'm sorry, I have to correct you.
Please.
3. I have 3.
He's a three-time. He's not just a two-time. He's a three-time Emmy Award-winning game host for game show. Listen, man, I have none. 2 seems like a lot.
They're daytime.
3 is rubbing it in.
They're daytime Emmys. I didn't mean to rub it in.
All right.
And, or if I really wanted to rub it in, I would have told you about the other 3 that the show won. So I actually have 6 of those things in my studio at home, which is ridiculous.
If I had shelf space, I'd ask you to send me one.
I'll send you one.
Okay.
I don't know what to do with them. I put them there. Like, I have a studio because
Okay.
I'm as a hobby, I'm a musician. So I put them like behind the door in the studio. So you have to like be pretty far into the house and, to actually see them.
Could you load me one for parties?
Yeah. Yep.
All right.
$500 a night.
Oh. I'd have to, I don't even get invited to parties that would make that worth it. Damn.
They're just weird. I mean, I'm very proud of them. And it's just kind of a strange thing to have to figure out what to do with them. You have to have a case to put them in, or
It's a weird thing. It's like having a portrait of yourself. It's kind of like, your high school would have the awards case.
Yeah.
It's like having that in your house.
Right. Which is like, I don't want to have that in my house. I don't want to have here's all the stuff that I've accomplished, and everyone that comes over gets to look at it. Like, nope, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Just have a LinkedIn. Yeah, that's all you need.
You know what? I don't
Put it all
have.
up there.
I don't have a LinkedIn. I think I have a LinkedIn account, but I haven't checked it since LinkedIn was new.
All right, good news. You're hired.
I think I have 10,000 requests, and I've never responded to a single thing on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure he's not going to loan me that Emmy, folks.
You could borrow it.
Okay,
I'll bring it up with me next time.
Okay,
if I drive, which I'm gonna, because air travel has just become tremendously unreliable.
Yeah, in the last year, I feel like every single person I know who travels routinely is at least once a month posting something about how they got stranded somewhere.
Yeah, it's happened. It just keeps happening. Last night I had a 2.5 hour delay coming up, and then we circled 4 times before we landed, even though the weather had already cleared. And I was like, I don't know what is happening.
Are you complaining about an airborne tour of our city, Ben?
Well, the fourth loop was a bit much. I'm like, yeah, I recognize all of this from loops 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, well,
I was jokingly saying they were waiting for someone to go to the airport and open the doors to let us in, because it was 2 a.m. by then. So I was watching from the plane. I saw the guy get in his car and drive over and open up the airport.
Take the chain off the door. Is that what you thought was going to happen in Rochester?
Arrive.
How dare you, Ben? I'm just glad to have you. You're here in time. There's
Thanks,
4
man.
shows this weekend. You're going to be 2 tonight, 2 tomorrow night.
Yeah, man.
You get your tickets right now at carlsoncomedy.com. They are moving, folks. So I
They are
jump on
moving.
them now.
Get them now. Get them while they're hot.
Now, Ben, I got to talk to you about a lot of things because your career is so interesting to me.
Okay.
Because, how did this happen? 1993, you moved to LA and you bum a cigarette
Yep.
And the next thing you know, you're a comedian.
Yeah. Yeah. I came out of an interview at a hotel. I had worked in hotels, so I had good hotel experience.
Mhm.
But I had worked at like a really nice hotel in Jersey, the Hilton at Short Hills, which was literally the nicest hotel in the state of New Jersey at the time, the highest
Okay.
rated. But I moved to LA and everyone was like, "What? We don't care about Jersey at all." Like I couldn't get a job. One place was like, "We have 4 positions open." This hotel called the Mondrian, which I don't know if it's still there.
Okay.
I went there. There was a line around the building, 4 people deep for 3 jobs. And so I was like, I'm not going to get one of these jobs.
That's worse
And
than
I
an open
left.
mic line.
And so I went to what was then known as the Riot Hyatt, which was where all these bands stayed way back and destroyed rooms and stuff. And I
Okay.
did not get that job as a big step down from the hotel that I was working at.
You'd think they'd want a 6'6" Jersey guy walking around, right?
Well, it was, I was like behind the scenes, like I ran the room service department at that Hilton job, and it was a great gig. I loved it.
Yeah.
Because I'm a night owl and I got to work the night shift and whatever. But so couldn't get a job, came out of that failed interview, and some guys were standing around in front of this weird building that was all black with names written on it in white, and I was like, "What is that?" So I was kind of intrigued by the building. I kind of roamed over there. I was reading the names, and figured, "Oh, it's a comedy club." Huh, I've heard of those.
The world famous comedy club.
Yeah. And then next thing I know, there's these guys are like, "Hey, what do you, can we help you or whatever?" They worked there, the guy that was a manager there. And he said, "You have a good voice." He offered me a job. So I took it because I didn't have a job and I needed one. I think I was making $2.75 an hour.
Wow.
Answering the phones 3 days a week, 4 hours each. I wasn't exactly raking in the cash, but it was something. And
So
that's how I stumbled into stand-up. Yeah.
it's so weird though, because stand-up doesn't even sound like it was on the radar, Ben.
It was not, but I was already a comedian and didn't know it. Like my favorite thing and the thing I was best at was making people laugh at that point in my life, and had been for a long time. It never occurred to me that I might make a job out of it
Okay.
until I was, at the club and someone thought I was a comedian. This guy named Skip E. Lowe. And he was like, "You're funny. You should do my show on Saturday. Come do my show Saturday night." And that sounded a little bit like Mitzi.
That's like the LA thing where everybody assumes everyone is a comedian or an actor already.
Yeah. He said, how long have you been doing it? And I was like, "Doing what?" He's like, "Stand up." And I was like, "I just started." I had never done it before. I just said I just started. And so he put me on a show.
I'm new.
Yeah.
I'm newish. Yeah.
So I did. I went out there and I got a laugh with the first thing that I said. And I knew, honestly, right in that moment that this stand-up comedy thing was going to be my life. And that's 30 years ago. In December, it'll be 30 years.
Wow. Happy anniversary.
Thanks, man.
That's pretty amazing. 30 years
Thank
in
you.
comedy is not an easy thing to do, let alone 30 years in any job. So
yeah, that's
bravo.
like crazy. I can't believe that I'm so old.
Hey, Ben, who is your favorite game show host?
My favorite game show host
Yeah.
was probably Alex
Trebek?
Trebek was probably my favorite.
What about him did you like?
I don't know. He just did it so well. He just owned it. He like Jeopardy would be a very tough show to host
Sure.
because it moves quickly and you got to know stuff and you got to be on top of things. And he just did it with ease,
How
and class and style. And I got to know him. Like we were at the Emmys. Back to the Emmys. Sorry, we were at the Emmys a bunch of times together because we were nominated together.
Uh-huh.
And so I got to know him a little bit.
And
he
you
was
beat
like,
him 3 times, was it?
No, maybe. I can't remember if he was. I can't remember who was nominated. All I remember is the first time I was walking out of Penn Station and the texts popped up on my phone. "Congratulations on your Emmy nomination." And I thought it must be a joke. And so then I looked and it was like, the Mount Rushmore of game show hosts and me. I was like, this is ridiculous.
Wow.
But so I got to know Alex a little bit, and he was just a great guy. He was not the kind of pompous person that some people might have perceived him to be. He was actually like really funny and fun, and yeah, just a great guy.
That's interesting because
But I mean, Barker was great.
okay. So do you think that
Very
Alex
different styles.
Trebek or Bob Barker could host a show well obeying traffic regulations?
Okay, first stipulation. I was not obeying traffic regulations.
All right. All right, fair enough. You know,
I was most of the time, but I also got away with a fair amount. I don't know, man. It takes a special animal. I know maybe that's a weird thing for me to say about myself, but I've been a driver. As soon as I got my license, I've been driving to make a living. So to host a show while driving was just kind of came easily to me because I just have always been a driver. And if you have not always been a driver, I think it would be very difficult to adapt and do that.
well, I want to compliment you,
Especially if
because
you're 80. Barker.
translating from the world of stand-up. Now, I know you went from LA to New York. You're originally a New Jersey guy. You went back east,
Yeah.
and you hung around with like the greats down in New York. I mean, you're of the school, my friend.
Who are you talking about?
Well, I'm
The
talking about
knuckleheads that used to sit at the cellar
Yeah,
table?
those knuckleheads.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's my crew.
yeah.
A lot of those guys were a couple years ahead of me, but they were like the closest class, but yeah,
So
it's funny, man. We were just having fun and making the best of the situation we were in, and it's so funny that it's like this storied bunch of people now. I don't think any of us realized that at the time that was going to be the
well,
deal.
nobody ever does at the time,
Right.
But then you look back at it and it's like all these weird times. But like you come out of there and you were doing probably the most professional, straight-laced type of show where it's humorous, it's fun. You're not actually being necessarily a comedian. You're hosting a game show that is wildly successful on a cable network that is also wildly successful. You're being nominated with the greats like Alex Trebek,
Yeah.
and then all your buddies are just sitting at that table calling each other douchebags all day. Like, it's so weird to me. Like, what was that dynamic like for you when you would go back there while you were doing Cash Cab?
Honestly, I didn't go back that much because
Okay, that checks out.
not because I didn't want to, but Cash Cab was such a hard gig that it was so mentally and physically exhausting that I tried repeatedly to go out and do stand-up shows after while we were filming, and I just couldn't do it, man.
It took too much out of you.
Too much. I was too spent at the end of the day to deal with an audience, and I would end up getting angry, and like I had all this like pent up road rage, But so,
oh no,
yeah, and it would come out when I tried to get on stage, and I stopped. I didn't really go to the clubs in the city that much after Cash Cab hit.
So
And I kind of regret it, honestly, but I tried. It's not like I could have done it. So I just wasn't in there that much at that point. But when I did go in, it was the same old.
yeah,
Everybody's just busting my balls as soon as I showed up.
sure.
Oh, hey, turn around so we can recognize you. Like,
Yeah, that's it. That tracks. That definitely tracks.
yeah. But it's the same old bunch of dudes. But now I go in and it's all young. I'm like, who are these people?
Right.
I don't know who these guys are.
That's the business, though. The business is very cyclical.
It is. Yeah.
People come, people go. People are out touring.
Yeah. Well, that's
doing
the
other
part
things.
that I think none of us really foresaw. Back in those days, it felt like we were all going to be sitting at the table at the cellar every night forever and, ripping each other apart and laughing and all that. And then we got to the point where everybody's out on the road headlining, and it was like, you know what? I never see those guys anymore.
Yeah.
I love them, though. They're like my second dysfunctional family.
So this morning, someone reminded me about the Patrice O'Neal roast.
Yeah.
And folks, if you have never seen the Patrice O'Neal roast, that's cool. But maybe give it a watch because it is a very old school style roast. And there's a lot of love there. And what I really enjoyed about watching your 18-minute set, Ben.
Oh my God, is it 18 minutes?
There's 18 minutes of you viciously laid into every comedian that was in the room.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was not only savage and hysterical, it was laser focused. And I was just going, I did not know that Ben had that in him. Like, I'm looking at you in the last few hours in a completely different light just because of watching that
Oh,
video.
so you hadn't seen or heard it
I
before?
had seen it,
Oh,
completely
okay.
forgot it.
But years ago, yeah.
Completely forgot
That
it.
was a great night for me. Because I was on that thing, but like if you look at the promos for it, I'm not listed. Like nobody expected me to do anything. And I was like, I'm gonna put some time in on this. I'm gonna write, and I did, and they kept pushing me back. They're like, no, we're gonna put up, we're gonna do Burr's gonna go, Geraldo's gonna go. I'm like, guys, come on, man, you keep. And every time they pushed me back, I would get another beer. So like by the time I went up, I was pretty, I was maybe 8 beers deep.
Okay.
Which for the time was not that much for me because I was drinking pretty hard back in those days. But so I don't know. I was kind of like my anger was genuine because they kept pushing me back, and I don't know. And I wrote and I was prepared.
So you wrote that material before you were there, and then
Yeah.
you were becoming more annoyed at the fact that you were being pushed back. And
Yeah.
that anger led into the delivery of the prepared material. Is that what we're saying?
I
here?
think so. Yeah.
Okay. Because my question,
I was pretty angry all the time. If I was awake, I was angry at that point in my life.
I'm looking at my notes here, and I just want you to know I wrote pent up rage versus great joke writing and how they could go hand in hand. And I'm glad to hear that I was kind of right on that because
you were definitely right on that. Yeah.
Watching that back, man, I gotta say, it was one of the funniest things I've ever seen.
Oh, thanks, man.
You were so on point with it and vicious that it's worth a watch, folks. If you've never seen it, you might want to check it out. And I will also remind you that Ben will not be roasting the audience this weekend. If you do watch it, he's just going to be having fun with you at Comedy at the Carlson.
Yeah, it's going to be good fun.
Shows.
No vicious attacks of any kind, just some observation and some good laughter.
Did I hear that you had to get yourself licensed to be a cab driver?
Yes, I did. Yeah. Yep. After all the years in comedy, I had to get a hack license and drive so I could drive the cab to host Cash Cab. Yeah. I had to go to taxi school. I had to do a drug test and a major background check. I had to jump through a lot of hoops to get the gig. It took about 6 weeks from the first audition until they were like, okay, you've got the job.
So when you get the job, you're doing the show, did you ever just go out and try driving a cab just to see what would happen?
No.
Did you ever just go do it? You only did it with the camera on?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh man, when we started, we hadn't really found the show, so we were shooting 6 days a week, 14, 15 hours a day, trying to find it, and we finally did, and we were like, oh my God, this could actually be something great. But so if we were not filming, the last thing I wanted to do was be in that cab.
Okay.
I never fit in the damn thing. My knee was against the dashboard the whole time. If I didn't have my foot on the gas or the brake, it was dangling.
Oh, that's the worst.
Because I didn't fit. And eventually they actually unbolted the seat, drilled new holes, and moved the whole thing back so that I could fit. But then the people couldn't get in the back seat. Their feet would get stuck between the partition and the seats. So we had to move it back.
So they had to make a specialized Cash Cab that they weren't planning on for season 2?
Yeah, well, no, that was like season 6 or something.
Oh my God.
At one point they were like, we ordered you a new seat from Toyota. We got a brand new seat coming. It's coming from China. And we waited with bated breath, and then it showed up, and it was the exact same seat that was already in the cab.
But it's new.
We spent like $5,000 on it.
But it was brand new.
It was brand new. Same color, same everything.
So no, you can't have your money back. That show is so interesting to me because
Cash Cab?
Yes.
It's kind of a weird unicorn of TV shows a little bit.
It is, because it is fantastic in syndication. If I ever see it on anything, I keep it on just because it's always interesting, and I feel like I've never seen the same episode twice.
I feel like that's a big part of the success of the show is like it's easy to just leave it on. So if you flip to it, you're like, oh, I could just, even if you're not listening, you could just like New York's going by and there's like different new characters popping in the back all the time,
Now, when you do that show, I have to ask how. When I watch it, I'm trying to figure out the nuts and bolts of anything that I watch. I have
Sure.
that kind of a brain. So
Yeah,
what I want
yeah.
to know is how random was the contestant selection? How did that actually really go down?
In the beginning, it was 100%.
Okay.
We literally just picked up whoever, and we got what we got. Down the road, we kind of stacked the deck a little bit, and I don't mean that it was rigged in any way. It was not, but we would have a team of street casters, so they would interview people a little bit ahead of time
Okay.
to make sure, excuse me, number one, that they had time to play, because that was the number one biggest reason people would not play, is because they didn't have time. To make sure they spoke English, because often people would hail me, and would pull over and get in. They wouldn't speak English. I'm like, this is going to work.
Question about the time situation.
Yeah.
Somebody gets into the cab and they're like, buddy, I don't want to play your game.
Right.
I got to get to a meeting. Do you still have to drive them?
No.
You say get out?
Technically, I was a legal cab, and we would have to drive them, legally speaking, but I never did. We would just put them in, give them a 20, put them in a new cab if they didn't want to play.
All right, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
What would you say the percentages of that?
That didn't want to play?
Yeah.
Drastic difference between the beginning and the end. In the beginning, nobody wanted to play. They all, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
They all thought I was full of shit.
Right.
I'd play the music and hit the lights and tell them, you're in the Cash Cab. It's a TV game show. And they'd be like, bullshit.
It's a hell of a prank.
They'd be like, turn that music down. Like, yeah, this is my music that I listen to. But then toward the end, maybe season 4, 5, when the show was widely known, everybody played. Maybe, 1 in 50 games pickups, they'd be like, I don't want to play. Maybe less than that.
When the show did pick up and became huge, it was very big. It was a very big show. Like, I feel like it was parodied in a lot of places.
It was, yeah.
And that's like how
several
you know,
SNL
right?
sketches and stuff. Yeah.
That's how you know.
Yep. Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
So when your face gets associated with something like that, you become insanely recognizable, right?
Yeah.
Does that drive you crazy?
No.
Do people jokingly walk up to you and ask you for rides all the time?
All the time.
Like that?
Still happens all the time.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's good. It's a positive thing.
Okay.
I realized years before Cash Cab, Dave Attell had Insomniac, and his fans would come out, and that was the first time that it occurred to me that your fans are going to be relative to what they know you for. Like, those people wanted to come out and drink with Dave, and they would scream Insomniac and like, fuck it, Dave. They were crazy party people.
It's a double-edged sword.
Party. And it was like, oh my God, I hope I get something. If I get something, I hope it's something that will bring out people that are, that are going to listen and like be kind of nice. I couldn't have gotten a better turnout for that request, because people that are like big Cash Cab fans are generally pretty nice.
Yep.
Slightly maybe nerdy. They love trivia and stuff, like I do. And so, yeah, it's a good thing.
Yep. Okay.
They're almost always like very positive, very nice. Yeah, it's good. Kind of like it used to be lonely on the road. I remember coming out at the airport and nobody was there to greet me. You see all these people like Mom, Dad, or like kids coming home from college. There's hugs, reunions, and you're just alone.
Oh no.
And then so after a while, I was like, oh, I'm not alone. People know me now. Hey, Ben, they think they know me. So I'll just pretend I know these people too, because they're fans. So it's kind of nice, man.
It makes every place feel a little bit like home then.
Totally. And people are welcoming and they know you, like I said, I don't know them, but they know me. So it's nice.
All right. Well, folks, Ben Bailey is going to be here at Comedy at the Carlson for 4 more shows this weekend. You get your tickets now at carlsoncomedy.com. And before I let you get out of here today, Ben, I got to ask you.
Yes.
Can you tell me a story about a time that maybe you had someone who played the game and you couldn't use it on the show, or maybe you had to cut it? Maybe a little behind the scenes stuff. Was there any thing extreme that maybe you couldn't let get out there?
There's a couple of things that come to mind.
All right, I'll listen to all of them.
A lot of times, if people didn't want to play or couldn't play, they wouldn't sign the release. So then we couldn't use their footage.
Sure.
But a couple times they did sign the release and we could use it, but mostly couldn't. So like the first one that comes to mind, I'm driving up First Avenue and I pass a giant man in a purple rabbit suit. I mean, he's like, I'm 6'6", or he used to be. He's got to be 6'9", 350, easy. And he's dressed as a rabbit. He's like head to toe in a velour rabbit suit and high heeled shoes.
Bunny suit.
Okay. Yeah, like a bunny rabbit. Purple with the big ears and everything.
Uh-huh.
And he's a huge guy. I'm like, I got to pick this guy up. I pull over. He gets in. I hit him with the lights and the music.
Uh-huh.
And he's calling me baby. So I start calling him Rabbit. He's calling me baby. I'm calling him Rabbit. We get into an argument because he doesn't want to play. I guess going to a club in that outfit is one thing, but being on national TV is a different item.
Yeah.
So we exchange words, like harsh words, and he just gets out and leaves. And that's that. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the first one I remember where we were like, I wish we could use this stuff, but he wouldn't sign, so we couldn't use it.
So he was just arguing with you, calling you baby, and you're like, well, Rabbit.
I was like, don't call me baby. And he was like, I'll call you whatever I want to call you. And I go, listen, Rabbit. And like we literally started having an argument, me and this giant dude in a rabbit suit.
You're not my buddy. You're not my pal.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen, pal.
That's hysterical.
It was pretty funny. And so like he just got out and he's just standing there in his giant rabbit suit smoking a cigarette waiting for another cab.
Okay.
And we're stopped like half a block away just watching him.
All right. Did anybody ever like really frustrate you with their inability to answer a very simple question, like stuff like that?
Oh,
Did that
God,
drive you
a million times, because they're so nervous that they forget they can't come up with the answers that they know. Sure. I had a mechanic who couldn't come up with spark plug. He's like, I'm an auto mechanic. I'm like, dude, you looked shell shocked.
Don't tell people that.
Like he was just like. He couldn't say anything. And I just kept giving him the question again. I'm like, come on, I know you know this.
Wow.
We had Kurt Vonnegut's daughter in the cash cab, and she didn't know. I asked her, and the question was like, in a vehicle, the gauge that tells you how fast you're going is called a speedometer. The gauge that tells you how far you've gone is called a
odometer.
She didn't know it. She called her dad, Kurt Vonnegut, as a shout out. And he was like, hello. Like we'd have it on speaker then. We had like a deal with some cell phone company. So we'd had their phone and we would use our phone and not. So I called Kurt Vonnegut and he was like, hello. And she was like, hey, Dad, it's me. And he was like, oh, hey, I got some mail here for you. She's like, Dad, I'm on a game show. And he's like, what? She's like, I'm in the cash cab. He's like, what?
I refuse to believe that Kurt Vonnegut has a television.
It was so funny. He had no idea what the show was.
Yeah.
And she goes, I need your help answering a question. And he's like, oh, okay. What's the question? She repeats the question to him. Or no, I do. I can't remember how we used to do it. I think I would say it and then they would say it. And so I'm feeding her the question. She's reading it to her dad, Kurt Vonnegut. And he goes, you don't fucking know that? And she's like, no. And she's like, could you just tell me what it is? And he didn't want to tell her. He was so mad that she didn't know the answer. But finally he was like, it's an odometer. And he click. He hung up. I was
That's
like,
the funniest thing.
isn't that awesome? And
You shamed an American icon's daughter on television.
she did it to herself. I was like, just think about it.
Oh,
Once again, you're thrown into a situation where you're on TV and you're nervous and you
Sure.
cannot think of stuff when you're nervous. But Kurt Vonnegut was pretty upset. That's the second time that I interacted with Kurt Vonnegut.
what was the? Did you remind him of the first?
He had no recollection of the first.
Okay.
The first time I was on stage.
Did she ever get her mail? Did you find out?
I think she got
Okay.
her. I think she got the package.
Okay, what's the second
By
one?
the way, she had never read any of his books. She was like 25 at the time. I go, by the way, I'm a huge fan of your dad's. I've read all of his books. Which one is your favorite? And she goes, I never read any of them. And I was like, oh my God, that's crazy. I mean, hey, if it was your dad, maybe you wouldn't read the books.
Boy, am I depressed now.
I'm sorry.
It's
Such a
all
downer.
right.
But okay, so this next story will cheer you up. I'm on
Please.
stage at New York Comedy Club, which was a dump. Like you literally
Oh, yeah.
could be on the stage and see rats running under the chairs. The crowd wouldn't see them, but you could see them from the stage. So I'm on stage at New York Comedy Club. It's like a Wednesday night. Here comes Kurt Vonnegut, walks into the showroom and sits down. Like they used to have like tables in the front, and then there was an aisle, and then there was like a long, high booth, and then there
Okay.
was seats behind that a little higher, right? So there's this long booth. He came and he sat right in the booth, right in the front, just a little bit to the left. And I recognized him. I knew who he was.
Yeah.
And I didn't say anything, but I put all this pressure on myself to like do really well because Kurt Vonnegut's in the crowd.
Yeah. You don't want to bomb in front of him.
You don't want to bomb in front of him. So I like gave the old college effort and college try. And I had a good set. There's only like 20 people in there or something. And as I came off, I went over to like say hi and introduce myself and see what he thought.
Uh-huh.
Passed out drunk. He didn't hear a word. He just came in and sat down and passed out immediately. And apparently he had been known to do that from time to time. He would come into the club, order a drink, and just pass out because he's already pretty hammered.
You might have been the only comedian who knew who he was, too.
Yeah. Well, it was perfect timing because I was reading his books. I was like into Vonnegut at that time. I was
What
like,
a fever dream that has to be for you.
So weird. I was like, he's out cold.
Wow.
And another thing, Vonnegut.
So listen, I might be going out on a limb here for this show, but I just
Okay.
got a private message from a listener and they want to know, do you have any good Kevin Brennan stories?
Kevin Brennan.
Yeah,
stories.
so wants to know if you have any good Kevin Brennan stories.
Who the hell is Kevin Brennan?
All right, moving on. How's Neil? How's Neil doing? So, ladies and gentlemen, there are 4 more opportunities to see Ben Bailey here at Comedy of the Carlson. And Ben, we have a lot of young comics who listen to this show.
Oh, cool.
One of the things I like to do is take a moment to maybe get a little advice, some experience from you. And the question that I like to ask, because I like to frame it in 2023, where we are currently. You've been doing comedy, like you said, this is 30-year anniversary.
Coming up, yeah.
There's a lot of wisdom here, folks.
I don't know about
He's the only guy who knew who Kurt Vonnegut was in that room. You better listen to Ben Bailey. Okay? Now,
right.
The question is this. If you were starting from scratch right now in 2023, you don't have the career you had, but you know everything you know, where would you start? What would be the first thing you would do if you were coming out of the gate?
I would go to New York. Same as it was when I started. When I was at the store in LA, everybody was like, go to New York. If you want to be a comedian, go to New York. And I think that still holds true. I mean, the scene is obviously bigger everywhere now, including in LA.
Yep.
When I started there in LA, by the way, it was dead. There was nobody in the clubs. Like the weekend shows were like pretty packed, but nothing the rest of the week. People outside trying to get people to come in, and that was true in New York too. But New York was the trenches of comedy, as we like to put it back then, and I think that's still the case. So I would go to New York. I would go to the Cellar.
Mm-hmm.
I would get on stage as often as I could. I would try not to pay any attention to what anybody else is doing. and just do your own, whatever is you, whatever comes out of you when you do it. And remember that it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. There's no path to follow. It's a crapshoot, honestly.
It's a marathon on a path that is not defined.
It is. It really is, man. And the only path that I could find that was something that I could actually have tangible progress within that was my own abilities. And I was like, I just want to follow this path and be the best comedian that I can be and be unique. And it's so easy if you're going to get into comedy to fall into this spot where everybody knows what everybody's doing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like, it's kind of disappointing in a way that here I would have assumed that most of the people in this particular business would be individuals and their own people and not care much about what everybody else is doing. But it's so easy to get caught up in that.
Yeah.
There's an in crowd, there's that whole kind of hierarchy it's all imaginary. And I didn't get into it for that. I got into it to not be a part of, in part, to not be a part of something like that. And because I always had trouble fitting into something like that. So I don't know. I would say that, be true to yourself and don't get caught up in what other people are doing, because you'll end up bitter and, and remember that you're a clown. You're supposed to be having fun. That's the whole of it.
That's very, very, very hard-fought wisdom, folks. That's a man who knows. That's a man who roasted Patrice O'Neal and got a applause break from Patrice O'Neal in the middle of a roast. You ever do that? You ever host a game show where you're driving a cab?
My favorite part of that whole roast with Patrice is when I came off, the place was going crazy. I mean, absolutely nuts. And then Keith Robinson had to go up. And he came in
you
way
just
unprepared for
Keith Robinson.
For 18 minutes. And I crushed him, Keith in particular. And then Keith goes up and he's bombing. He's just bombing for at least 8 minutes. He's just dying. And people are like, get off. Like they're shutting off the lights, shutting off the mic. So at one point, somebody goes, Keith, it's over. And Keith goes, it ain't over. It ain't over till the fat lady sings. And Patrice goes, oh. like a quarter of a second later, it was wow. It's my favorite part of the whole thing.
All right, folks, if you want more Ben Bailey, please visit therealbenbailey.com. Follow him on Instagram and Twitter at @RealBenBailey. And most importantly, if you want to have a good time, check out Ben Bailey Comedy on YouTube. A lot of great funny shorts. You can watch your full stand-up specials up there. But most importantly, I'm sorry, I already said most importantly, terrible transition. Come see him this weekend at the Carlson, carlsoncomedy.com. I'm going to be back this Thursday with Chris Reed. Hope you all join us then. And until then, we'll see you at the show, Rochester. Act right. Thank you for being awesome and watching another episode of the Carlson Cast. Don't forget we're streaming live on Facebook and YouTube every Friday morning. You could also follow us on social media on Twitter and Instagram at CarlsonCast. You can listen anytime on iTunes, Google Play, and we're now available on Spotify. You should also check out an amazing app called Laughable. And on the Laughable app, you can connect to your favorite comedians in a way you never thought you could before. Download it in the App Store and visit carlsoncast.com for information on more shows. And don't be a jerk. Rate and review.